God healed me from porn and masturbation, and maybe there was part of me that was so proud that I felt like I shouldn't be dealing with this. But God's grace is abundant, right? You can always tap into it, and today is the best time to receive God's grace. As tomorrow, it's still going to be available to you, to everyone.
Welcome back to another episode of Love, Life, and Lineage Legacy. Whoops. I don't even know the name of my own podcast, everybody. It's late here, and I stayed up late because I wanted to get this interview. I wanted to do this talk with my bro. His name is Hebangja Kisile. I hope I didn't butcher that. He is somebody that I, as we established on the podcast, met about 7 years ago in Detroit, of all places. I didn't think there were many redeemable things in Detroit, lest I forget that Hebangja is the man, and he's the coolest guy. And in this episode, we go through a lot, but it's actually really deep. He's a very deep guy. He's now a pastor in Indiana with his wife and his daughter, and we open up a lot of things about his past and what he learned from growing up in Africa, and how he's transferred all of his lessons into a marriage that he's so deeply in love with. Like, obviously he's in love with his wife, but he's just in love with his blessing situation and his daughter. He's just really alive, and it's really nice to see. And he says that he owes it all to, well, why don't you listen? Let's get into it. All right. So we have him. It was a little bit of a scramble because he had to put his baby night. Except what time? So, first of all, welcome, Hebangja. Welcome.
Thank you, Andrew.
When did we first meet?
We first met, I'm not sure, maybe 5-6 years ago in Detroit at the INOM program.
No, bro, that was like 2018 or something. That's like,
Yeah,
it's like a million years ago. There were dinosaurs walking the earth at that time.
I know.
Yeah.
We first met there. You came to do a INOM program. You're talking to us about porn and masturbation.
That was
It's not
crazy.
good for you. You go to hell.
I don't think you were listening. So back in those days, that was crazy because I was just invited. I would just go places. So you want a funny story about that is your pastor back then, that was in Detroit, right? The pastor then, he bought me a ticket in his name. So I showed up to the airport and I couldn't get on the airplane, and he had to buy a whole new ticket, and he was so bummed out, and I waited all day and then just barely got there in time, and I think got whisked away by Uncle William, who's just everywhere somehow. Last time I saw him, he was in New York driving people around, and then I saw him in Detroit and he drove me around. Next time I was in New Jersey, he was driving me around. He either has many twins or he's omnipresent.
And then omnipresent.
I spoke at an ACLC event in front of some senator. That was weird. And then we did an event in August Basement. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
What a weekend! Those are like the Wild West days of High Noon. And so
then you spoke at Sunday service.
Oh yeah, that was official. That was nice.
Yeah.
So that was our first time.
There. Yeah.
And what was your impression when you first heard this content? Had you already heard stuff about porn in other workshops, or was this the first time hearing it out loud in like a church environment?
I think that was the first time for me hearing it at a church environment. I had had my own journey prior to that, and so I think it was very new. It was new at that time. So I was hearing it for the first time. I was living in Grand Rapids, which was 2 hours away from Detroit. I heard about it. I wanted to come and see what it was all about. And it was good stuff. It was good stuff.
Was it awkward? Did you feel awkward hearing about it? or was it just like a breath of fresh air because somebody's talking about it?
Yeah, I think it was, it was fresh air that someone was speaking about it. It wasn't awkward for me. I grew up very traditional. I mean, I grew up in a movement where the founders always talked about sex and all sort of
Hmm.
stuff. So it wasn't really awkward to me. It was, yeah, it was hopeful that finally, yeah, we're not just talking about absolute sex, but we are actually addressing the reality of things because the reality and the idea are just miles apart at some
Hmm.
time. So it was really good to see that we are finally talking about the reality.
So then, how were you raised? How was the topic of sex in your house? And you're saying that, I mean, True Father definitely openly spoke about sex, but what the strange thing is that nobody else did. It was kind of like he spoke into this large group and then everybody pretended like it didn't happen. Like they saw something like a ghost and everybody just pretends like it doesn't exist. Um, so what was it like for you growing up around the topic of sex? Was it just like, don't touch this? It's kind of like this dangerous thing, or was it discussed openly, or did you have to come to a lot of your own conclusions? What was it like?
Mm. Well, my father was a pastor, like a hardcore pastor, so I was raised up that way. And in the early years of my life, it was kind of don't touch, don't look, don't even think about it. It's then you become a teenager that, well, I can't avoid this stuff, yeah. And the first time my father ever talked to me about it was in a kind of morning prayer, okay, and he kind of asked me, "What will you do if someone asks you to show them your sexual organ?" And I was
What a
just taken
question.
aback. Yeah, I was taken aback, and kind of my defense mechanism was to laugh about it. And my
Yeah.
father was furious. He was like, "This is no joking matter." Yeah, that was
Hmm.
kind of the first time my father brought it up, and
Wow.
then yeah. So very intense, very serious that way. Then I think from there on, we had several conversation and about sex and the opposite gender. I think in a very religious way. But I do appreciate that we could have those kind of conversations. My father
Hmm.
was very open about it. It's but in a very religious sense, in
Sure.
conveying the teachings of our movement. So I appreciate that, and I feel that was good that yeah, my father was not shy about it.
So, I mean, when somebody confronts you on that level, right, and asks such a question, that sounds a lot like True Father. When you read those old speeches where he would be talking about sex, you would read in the transcripts, he would say, "Stop laughing. Stop laughing. This is not a joke. Not a joke," right? Exactly like your dad. Um, but did that make you very tense because he's educating you about this really important thing? I have heard from other people that they grew up with parents who made it such a big deal that it was so heavy and just like this really big thing. It was like, it was, it seemed formidable. It didn't seem like something you grow into and get to enjoy in the future. It just seems like this big, ominous, dark force that you have to avoid at all costs. Was that like growing up, the general sense that you got was just like this feeling of stay away from this scary thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think for the most part, it was like you have something so precious, your purity, you are a blessed child, the second generation, you have something so special, don't lose it. Right. And if you lose it, there is a very serious problem. And perhaps that was the time we were living in, and that's kind of I mean, I reflecting on it, like I'm grateful because that's kind of how our parents know or knew how to talk about it. It's like you can't give what you don't have. But yeah, it is true that it made it kind of tense, and many times there was fear of bringing up things. And
Mm,
it's like, yeah, Dad, there is this girl at school. It's like I couldn't really bring that up very
mm,
easily. But when my father did find out about things, when he did notice things, then he would kind of confront me about them. And, then I'll say, well, that actually this and that.
mm,
But that freedom of first bringing it up was not there because I was tasked to protect something so precious that if I lost, the world will fall apart. You know what I'm saying?
mm. Yeah, absolutely. We have entire talks about that now, about purity 1.0 and 2.0. And what you're talking about is 1.0, which is just like all the fear-based stuff that you will lose if you lose your purity, you lose all these things instead of all the things you gain by maintaining a sense of purity, right? No. So
Yeah,
then, and aren't you the oldest sibling?
no, so
Oh,
I have two. I have an older brother and an older sister.
okay.
So my parents joined as a previously married couple. And
Mm-hmm.
so they had my older brother and my older sister. So I was the first blessed child after
Mm,
they received the blessing. So they had me.
got it.
Yeah.
And with all of your siblings, how many younger siblings do you have?
I have five.
Five younger siblings. Wow.
Yeah. So there
They're
is
in,
eight of us all together.
wow. And so
Yeah.
amongst you guys, when you get into your teenage years and you start looking around, you start existing out of the house together and you start observing that other kids are dating and like all this stuff. Like, how did you interact with your siblings about it? Was it also just everybody was afraid to acknowledge the fact that there were attractive people in your life, or did you talk about it? Did you have like a different way of talking about kind of relationships with your siblings than with your parents, or was it all just kind of the same, or what was the dynamic amongst your siblings?
Well, yeah, among the brothers, we didn't really talk about it. It's yeah, so much. Yeah. And of course, I mean, there is my older sister between myself and my older brother. So that's like 5 years difference.
Oh, wow.
It's, yeah. And then, yeah. And then, right after me, it's a sister, then a brother. So definitely my younger brother was way younger, to
Mm,
talk about it. So we never really talked about it. It's among the brothers as I'm not sure about the sisters. They might have talked about it. It's but by the time we started going to high school, we would go to high school together, and we would see who everyone was hanging out with. It's like I had
mm,
female friends, and we would joke sometimes. It's like, oh, do you like that girl? Kind of
mm,
thing. It's like, why are you always with that girl? Is something going on? Kind of always jokingly like
mm.
that. But we never really had deep conversation and about it. And part of it, I think, is because of kind of the fear around it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you ever feel like as their elder brother for your younger siblings, like you were looking at them with kind of that eye of like, with your younger sisters looking at the boys being like, don't look at them. Did you have that kind of protective quality?
Oh yeah, I always felt that way. Yeah, I always felt mostly toward the boys somehow. It's like don't hang around my sister, kind of thing. Don't come close.
Mm,
Because I couldn't trust the boys. I couldn't trust the boys because I played
mm,
soccer, so we would play soccer together. Like where I grew up, almost everyone played soccer. It was a big thing, so we played soccer together, and I'd listen to the conversations that they were having in the ways that they talked about women, and I just didn't want them to talk about my sister as that
mm,
way, and
mm,
so I always felt. like I wanted to protect my sisters, kind of don't try with my sisters, as kind of
Hmm.
thing. Yeah.
How did you deal with that? This is also a common thing of like, okay, you're in a locker room, bunch of male energy, you're all sweaty from soccer, and then guys start speaking about girls in the way that they do in locker rooms, which is never, Shakespearean, or it's never poetic. It's just very crass, and Um, did you ever feel pressured to just kind of go along with it? Or because I know you to be you're a pretty righteous guy. Did you just opt out, or did you take a stand and, hey guys, we shouldn't be talking about women like this? Or how did you kind of deal with a bunch of guys who were talking about this? Obviously, there's like the fact that you don't want them to talk about your sisters like this, obviously, but then you yourself, did you find yourself participating in that kind of talk, or how did you deal with it?
No, I think yeah, my way is that I usually would let people know what my values are and how I operate. Right? And so
Hmm.
I made sure that they knew that this was not okay with me. And some of them, those who I was closest with, would kind of be mindful of that, and others kind of just did what they felt was okay to do. And
Sure.
I usually never try to, yeah, put up a fight and try to stop people in that sense, but I do make sure that they understand what is okay, what is acceptable or not acceptable for me.
Wow, that's amazing. So you just kind of wore your beliefs on your sleeve, and you just, you know, let people know?
Yeah. Yeah, I let people know. Oh, so yeah, I remember I would always tell people kind of proudly that, well, I don't date. I would not have sex until I find someone that I would spend eternity with. I remember just boldly saying that, and
Hmm.
I kind of did have a smart mouth, and sometimes they would try to kind of joke and say, "Well, anyways," then I would tell them, "Well, I have something that you don't have. You have lost your virginity, and I still have mine." So kind of thing. And yeah, I remember those days being so young and being so
Yeah.
righteous, and yeah,
Obviously not the greatest thing in the world to get into fights, but at the same time, it seems like to make wise decisions, you have to be quiet about them. And the people who make the worst decisions seem to be the loudest about them, right? And especially in the area of sex. And so, yeah, to be bold, to be a virgin in high school and to be bold about it takes a lot of guts, because obviously people are not going to understand on it immediately,
yeah.
right? So,
Well,
and
I was
then, so
always
okay,
told.
that's great. We will get to that because you are now a pastor, which is, it's good that you're confident. Um, but I wanted to know, because there's this dynamic that exists that a lot of parents don't understand, right? The parents that raise kids like you, because they see you and they're like, he's a good boy, right? They're talking to the other parents, they're like, he's a really good boy. He's a some parents might say he's a perfect boy. He doesn't date. He's pure and all this stuff. And then obviously they weren't raised in a world that's filled with cell phones and internet everywhere and porn just being thrown in your face. And so, how did that factor into this? Like, you know who you are, so much so that you speak it out to your friends in school, and yet you also have this other life that is completely contrarian to your expressed self, right? How does that work?
It's terrible. It's terrible. Oh, so I remember I was maybe 15 years old when there wasn't cell phones for me. I mean, I grew up in Africa, and so you have cell phones a little bit later because you can't really afford them. But my friends, all the people I hung out with, would bring pornographic materials. Like they would they will steal their father's kind of pornographic journals and bring them to school. Or it's like in the beginning, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I don't watch that, I don't look at that. Then they made fun of me. It was like, oh, he's gay and things like that.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, fine, I'm not gay. Here, I'm looking at it, right? So,
Oh yeah.
uh, yeah. Then
Mm.
suddenly you find yourself that this is becoming a part of your life now,
Mm.
and it's conflicting with the perfect boy. It's conflicting with this blessed child identity that you have, and yeah, that's not a fun feeling. Or you, it's like there is a part of you that you are constantly hiding, and
Hmm.
it's, yeah, I think it's really affect you in many ways. As yeah,
Well, how
that
did it
losing
affect
that
you?
freedom. Yeah, for me, it just I just felt I could not relate with my parents in kind of the most free way from that point on.
Mm.
And I was afraid. I didn't want to disappoint them and let them down. And so just felt I could not I was not free with them anymore. And that was tough.
Mm. So there's like a part of yourself that you felt like you couldn't reveal to your parents. You had to hide from them. And
Right.
that did that so that's just one area of your life, and especially pre-cell phones, it's not a huge area of your life. So imagine what it's like when kids are watching porn for like 3-4 hours a night, right? But it's
Right.
not nothing, but it's still like early stage. But even just with this small area of your life creates a small shadow. What was the kind of cascading impact? How did that, because it's like you have the secret from your parents, it creates this sense of hiding. Did it impact your relationship in larger ways? Like, was there like a domino effect where it kind of got in between you more? Or did it just stay in this one little area where you had this one little secret and no big deal?
Yeah, I think it just stayed in that little area for me. It never really spreads so much. It stayed in that little area, like that discomfort or that lack of freedom with my parents, but even
Mm.
with my siblings, things, you just feel that there is something about me that I cannot reveal. So there was always that.
Did it take away from your confidence at all as a leader? Because it seems like even when I met you, in whenever that was, I think it was 2018. Um, you were clearly somebody who takes to leadership naturally, right? Um, so as a leader of your siblings and as a natural leader of your community eventually, and now as a pastor, when you were dealing with this, did it impact your confidence and your ability to lead at all, or your feeling of power that you're a man of integrity, this kind of thing? Did it chip away at that at all?
Not really. I mean, my parents were not shy in that they were raising me to be a spiritual leader in the movement, and
Mm.
then that was very empowering for me. And I think it is out of that I found kind of the power to deal with whatever was going on, because I always felt I wanted to be a person of integrity.
Mm.
Yeah, and I always felt like I wanted to speak about this topic with integrity, because I
Mm.
knew as a leader I had to speak about it, but I could not do so unless I had dealt with it myself. Yeah,
So
so I
how did you
think,
do that? How did you go from not talking about it to talking about it?
well, so my testimony is this: God healed me from porn and masturbation. And maybe there was part of me that was so proud that I felt like I shouldn't be dealing with this, and I prayed to God sincerely. I think I offered condition, and I just told God I don't want to deal with it. I don't want this to be a part of my life. I and God healed me. So yeah, that's kind of the simple way to put it. But I wanted to take the practical steps. I wanted to do whatever it would take to be free from it. And so I looked at the triggers, and I looked at where it was coming from. So, well, then I didn't bring my phone to bed. I didn't bring my computer to bed. Kind of, I took those practical steps that
Hmm.
would kind of go against what was causing me to be in those situations, and I found people. I couldn't really be that open with my parent about it, but I did find people that I could be open to.
Okay.
So, and of course, around that time, my father had now gone to spirit world, and there
Hmm.
was that bridge was not there with my mother, and so I had to find people that I could share with honestly. So that was before I knew. So
Yeah, sorry about that. We were late to the party.
you were late.
So I want to understand this because this is not a typical testimony, and I want to unpack it because it's unusual, right? Typically, people don't experience God when they're in the gutter. They're in the gutter, and then somebody reaches down and helps them clean the muck off, and it's in this process that they experience God and healing, right? Through a substantial person, and through condition and through a process, but like the eventual result is an experience with God of healing and, redemption. Whereas it sounds like more that was the starting point for you. Like you were out of line, you were feeling bad, there's something kind of a shadow in your life, and you said God healed me. So like, and then you did the practical steps, right? So could you walk us through that a little bit to help
Yeah,
understand that?
I know this is kind of an unusual testimony, and this is the first time I kind of share it in public,
Thank you.
and I have shared it with a few people on a one-on-one basis. People come to me seeking help, and I share with them. This is my testimony. It's probably
Mm,
won't be the path for you. Oh, but yeah, I don't know. I've never found ways to put words to it.
mm,
I prayed about it. I had a showdown with God, and I told God, I don't want this to be a part of my life. And
mm,
I prayed that prayer for like several days or months. I don't want this to be a part of my life. And as I kept praying, the desire or the needs for pornography just kind of disappeared in
mm,
me, and I
mm.
just didn't go there. So I don't know how else to put it in words, but that's kind of just how it happened for me.
Howdy, folks. This is a quick ad roll for y'all who want to have sexual integrity, but you're confused, perhaps, as to how, and maybe you feel in the dark and you don't know how to find the light, and but you've been wanting to do something. Then I have the thing for you, which is to join our completely free, totally free, awesome webinar at highnoon.org. It is short, it is punchy, it's going to get the job done for you to get you enrolled in exactly what you need to quit porn and masturbation for free, so you can have hope in all the stuff that you want in life. All right, go check it out, highnoon.org.
It makes sense. I mean, after doing this for a while, and making it complicated because I'm trying to understand it, and now making it simple because it's starting to make a lot more clear sense, it really seems like there's a saying that the opposite of addiction is connection. And what I've understood is that there's really three forms of connection that we all long for: connection to our true selves, like to feel comfortable in our own skin, connection with Heavenly Parent, and then connection with a group of other people. And I would say that we're probably all deficient more in one than the others. We're probably all deficient in all of them, but there's one that's a lot more acute and painful. And it sounds like you were really longing for God and you had a sense of connection. And then that spurred you to then go and start connecting with yourself through building good habits. Okay, I'm not going to bring my phone to bed. Why? Because I'm going to go to bed and I don't need somebody else. I don't need other stuff in my bed. I just need me. That's connecting to yourself. And then you also mentioned that you started to talk with other people about it. So connecting with others. But it sounds like the big domino was some sense of belonging and oneness with Heavenly Parent. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's what it was for me. Yeah, and
Mm.
another part of it was just I was getting ready to kind of start exploring the matching and blessing thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I just I just felt, I mean, growing up, I was always taught it's like your purity is the best gift you can give to your future spouse.
Mm.
That's right. So that's kind of how I was taught, and that's kind of how I believed it.
Sure.
And I was getting kind of to that point where I started considering the matching and blessing, and so and I just started realizing that wow, I'm so close to what I had been longing for, and the gift is not quite there. And so I just felt I wanted to be a blessing to my future spouse. And so
Mm-hmm.
one of my motivations was that this would not be something that I would bring. I want to meet my future spouse and say to them, listen, I struggled with this, but not anymore. Oh, kind of thing. I
Mm.
really wanted to do that. And so I feel proud or even grateful that God could heal me, but I could also take the steps that it required for me to present myself in that way, where I could say proudly, like, "Hey, I don't struggle with porn and masturbation," and
Mm.
and I can be a gift or a blessing in that sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's what we want. That you did it. That's amazing. And so after you went through this process, did you feel, in Christian terms, it would be redeemed, reborn, renewed? Did you feel like you had received some sort of grace, this grace of renewal?
Yeah, I felt so. Oh yeah, I really, yeah, I've been loved. I think I see myself as the product of so many people's love and grace, as
Mm.
and so yeah, I felt after that I could find a new freedom. And it's amazing. It's amazing. My confidence just went up. I would not be a pastor if I was still struggling with that stuff.
Mm.
If I would not. It was terrible. I remember I was a youth pastor dealing with porn and masturbation. I just remember being feeling terrible.
Mm.
Inspiration was hard to find, and the drive was not there, and just felt I can't do this. Yes,
Mm.
and so growing from that, becoming a pastor, I just felt I would not do it without it. So I felt kind of God healed me so I can serve better.
That's
So yeah,
beautiful.
I have that feeling, that sense in me.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions that I, had prepared for this. Because so far it's just been a really nice conversation I'm having. But one of the questions is about grace because I'm sure you've offered it as a pastor. But in the past, I was a pastor 2 times, and both times was a time when True Mother was doing official grace ceremonies, right? And I would go to people's houses, and on behalf of True Parents, just offering people the opportunity to experience full grace, everything forgiven. Let's move on. And yet, after the ceremony, I think a lot of people had even deep experiences, but still returned back to their old lives afterwards. And so, um, I want to understand and unpack a little bit about this feeling of grace because it seems like it's always available to us, and I know True Parents set conditions to be able to do whatever happens that we can't see behind the scenes, in terms of spirit world and all that stuff. But it is always there, right? Just like inspiration, just like anything. And so, what could you try to unpack the experience of when you were a youth pastor, let's say, and you were struggling with porn, and then you dealt with it, you felt redeemed, and then all of a sudden porn started to lose its power. Um, what is this value that you feel that it's not worth watching porn anymore? Like, could you help people to understand it? Because it's one of our virtues, right? We have these 5 virtues, and one of them is grace because it's fundamental to this whole process. So I would love for you to unpack like your experience of grace, of what it looks like to not have it. You're a good kid, you know who you want to be, and yet you still have this secret life that makes you feel like crap. And then you graduate from it, and then now you feel like you have power because of it. You said you're a pastor because you've overcome this thing, right? So what is grace to you? What is this experience of grace?
So a turning point in my life is when I came to a personal realization, and that's perfection, at least for me. And I know I'm a pastor, so I don't want people to feel like this is the gospel, right? And and so for me, perfection is not a point of arrival, but it's a continued line. It's a continued journey. Yeah, and when I adopted this as being kind of the truth of my life, that I'm on a continued journey of growth, that took away a lot of pressure. The way we teach about it is first you reach the first blessing, then you reach the second blessing, and the third is maybe or hopefully. Yeah, but yeah, for me, I kind of realized, wow, it's like we have these benchmarks that you need to eat, and there is a lot of pressure. It's like you're either there or you are not. And so yeah, it just came to me, and I accepted it, welcomed it, and embraced it as my philosophy of life, that it's a journey. Yeah, and the way I put it is, I want to, no, Mother Moon had this as this motto where she say, I want to be more grateful today than I was yesterday, and tomorrow even more grateful. Oh, but it kind of in the same lines. I just feel life is about growth, right? I want to take just one more step today than I did yesterday, and that took away a lot of pressure for me. And it's like I'm getting better. I'm going there. I'll get there, and God is going with me. So for me, that was very helpful, and so I see grace as a boost. I see grace as kind of God's giving us a boost on this journey. Right? It's like, okay, you have so much stuff, it's weighing you down, and you can't take that step. And I want to give you grace so you can take that step. It does for me, it doesn't and it doesn't make us perfect. It doesn't mean it changes our characters or bad habits. It's just it gives us a boost to take that next step. And that's really what it is for me.
I couldn't stop kind of associating because you keep on talking about how important grace is, and it also happens to be your wife's name.
That's right. Yeah, my joke these days, we're in a period of special grace. Is my joke is no one has more grace than than me. So,
You got the most special grace.
yeah, I have the most special grace, and I
Yeah,
am
that's
grateful.
unbelievable. Because you attribute ultimately grace as your power, your source of power, and also your wife, I'm sure, is your source of power in many ways too, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So I want to know how is being a father changed you? Because that's what I was referring to in the beginning. You just put your baby back to sleep. Because your wife, Grace, she's gallivanting. What is she doing? She's flying an airplane, or what is she on a
Yeah, she's
horseback
she's
ride or
flying. She's
something?
flying to California right now. She's going to
Ah,
be with her parents for a little bit. Her parents are florists, so they have a flower business, and
oh
Valentine's
yeah.
Day is kind of a busy season for them. So she's going to
Hmm.
help them.
Kind of
And so I'm on daddy duty.
daddy duty. This is a good
You
man.
know,
And so now
so
that you're a papa, because I haven't known you as a father yet, I haven't really gotten to see this side of you, but like in terms of building yourself into a man of God, right? You're now a husband of God and a father of God. How has that changed your view on life and also faith and also um now that you have a daughter, right? So you have a daughter, so how does that impact your instincts, like to protect and, to nurture?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for a good amount of time after she was born, I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to be a dad. Yeah, so kind of, yeah, my words, my daughter became my words. And I love my daughter so much. So, and she's becoming a daddy's girl. So she loves her daddy. Yeah, and I'm all for it. But it's a beautiful feeling, but also a scary feeling still for me, because I look around and I look at myself. Every day I'm asking myself the question: Am I the kind of person she would grow up to be very proud of? And more especially in my relationship with my wife. Am I the kind of dad that she would grow up to say, I want a husband like my daddy. And so that's something that's coming up for me a lot these days, as you know. Also, I think, one day, I, I was sometimes, our Sunday mornings are kind of chaotic, and there was
Of
one time when
course,
we
yeah.
we had we had one car, and we don't drive to church together anymore, because I have to go early, and we were not getting ready, and I kind of I kind of lost my patience with my wife, in the presence of my daughter, and I just yeah, that was a terrible day for me. And I
Mm.
just felt, wow, this is not what I want to expose my daughter to. Oh, and so yeah, on a personal level, it's making me a lot more mindful, or a lot more reflective. So which is a beautiful thing. It's a good thing, and I'm
Mm.
grateful for that. And kind of I'm more interested in the words now. I'm interested in the words, because I'm really thinking seriously about the experience of my daughter. What kind of experiences I would like to expose her to, and I want to be very intentional about it.
Mm.
So I'm paying closer attention. I'm very mindful about the word and how it works.
Mm.
And I think at this point, it's one of my key motivations for being a pastor. I want a beautiful community for my daughter, and of course for other children, and that's a part of it. She needs to have community too, and
Mhm.
so part of my motivation, and or one of my motivations in being a pastor, is really creating a beautiful community that my daughter can grow up in. So in that way, kind of my world is revolving around my daughter a lot more. Oh,
Mhm.
and just watching and paying attention and being very intentional about it.
That's really wholesome and beautiful. And it sounds like God too, just this idea that, well, if I'm going to have these children, I better make, other stuff for them. And, the same feeling like a community. I need all this, these accoutrements. Um, so I'd love to kind of start wrapping it up with this idea of, imagine where you were at when you were kind of a youth pastor or that age, or imagine, pre-blessing, early 20s. And one big thing that we ask people to do in the process of healing themselves is to formulate a vision of what you're striving for, like your ideal self. You'd be willing to sacrifice your bad habits and your vices in order to receive this life. But first it requires you to have a vision. You need a vision. And so now that you have progressed in such a way, like you're a husband to a wife that you really love. Obviously, I can see it the way that you talk about her, and you have this beautiful daughter. Is there anything that you can share with kind of younger listeners to help them understand how much it's worth fighting the good fight in order to get these things that you now have that you value more than anything, right? Is there anything that you can share that can help them understand this side of life, like the other side that they haven't experienced? You're on the other side of it, right? Can you show them, like, what's the weather like over here on this side of of marriage and the blessing and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could spend an hour talking about that. It's, yeah. Where do I start? Yeah. So one day, kind of my youngest sibling asked me, he kind of, do I have to report everything to my parents? And I think she was part of a discussion that had to do with that, and so she wanted my opinion. And I said, you don't have to. And actually, in life, you don't have to do anything. Mm. And but it all comes down to the kind of life that you want to create. Who do you want to become? And so that's the question. Who do you really want to become? What do you want out of life? Think about it. And then the question is my current way of life really leading me closer to that? If not, then I'm just lying to myself, right? And it's the worst thing we can do. It's like, if someone lies to you, that's terrible. Oh, and for me, it's even much worse if you lie to yourself health, so just don't lie to yourself. Be truthful about it. Where do you want to go in life, right? And then
Hmm.
and every day try to get closer to that, um always, even now I always ask, is this conducive to the life that I want to lead? Does this bring me closer to the kind of husband, the kind of father that I want to be? If not, then that becomes my personal ministry, right? To kind of deal with it. And,
Hmm.
and so getting clear in that, I think opening our hearts to God's love is very important,
Hmm.
and receiving it from a parental figure, because my belief is that God's love flows from kind of through the vertical line. And so receiving it from a parental figure, we can receive it from friends, we can receive it from kind of all sort of people, but anyways, receiving it from a parental figure
Hmm.
becomes very important. Find ideally your own parents, but if not, find someone who can just convey Heavenly Parents' love to you substantially. Someone who sees it in you and can really say, "Hey, I see you growing," and encourage you. Finding that person would be important. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the core of what I would say. But if you put in the work, your future self would thank you for it. Your
Hmm.
future self would thank you for it. I have a lot of freedom with my wife. I don't really have anything to hide from her. And thanks to the hard work of overcoming in whatever is it that I was hiding. I don't feel like I can hide anything. I'm
Hmm.
not she's not I don't think she's worried about me. I'm not worried about her. And there is just this level of freedom, and trust that is very beautiful. So,
Hmm.
and I think that can be experienced in all our relationships, right? Not just husband and wife, but I have so much freedom with my mom, now.
Hmm.
We've worked through things, and I can share my heart with her. I said, this is what I think. So there's really nothing that I am hiding, and there is so much freedom from it. So much freedom.
That's a really good point. I think the other side of trust is freedom, right? When you cultivate trust, people just they let you do what you want because they trust that you have good intentions. It's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Do you have anything that you want to say that was unsaid? Anything that you want to leave people with?
I just hope people know that God loves them and God is rooting for them. God wants the best for you, and if you can open your heart to it you will receive it. You will receive it. This is my testimony when I open my heart to God and say, God, help me out here. When I acknowledge that I cannot do this with my own power, my own might, and just open a window in my heart
Mm.
for God help me. And I think anyone and everyone can experience this is, and we are at a very special time. What I'm doing these days is I'm meeting people who have quote unquote or it's challenges or issues or whatever issue it may be, and just bringing the grace to them.
Mm.
And so there is plenty of it. This is a period of special grace, but God's grace is abundance, right? You can always tap into it, and today is the best time to receive God's grace. As tomorrow it's still going to be available to you, to everyone. So open your heart to God's grace and receive it.
That was a good sales tactic. It'll be there tomorrow, but it tastes extra good today. Today's a very special day.
Yeah, it is way better today. I just think there is a window of opportunity, So
Mhm.
right, today is always the best time. Don't wait until tomorrow. Or if
Mm.
you can receive it today, then receive it today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And thank you. Please, special thanks to your daughter for being so chill for this exact portion of time and not having some diaper explosion or something exactly when we
Yeah,
start. So that's grace
no,
right
great.
there.
Yeah, she's 1 years old. She's starting to understand a lot. So
Yeah.
she's one. She just turned one. So it's beautiful. It's amazing. And now we're having deeper and deeper experiences. It's just so moving. Calls us mama, papa, and
Hmm.
sometimes she wants to feed us, and many times like she has boogers coming down her nose, and
Hmm.
and she's eating and she just wants to share her food with you, and you can't say no. And I feel so much. I understand God a lot more, and I feel just it's healing. It's healing. So
But it's only really there. I mean, you could externally have all this stuff, but internally you couldn't be there and enjoy it if you weren't the man that you became. And so that's the kind of that's the important part is you don't get to enjoy it unless you put in the work. Just like wisdom, it has to be earned, and same with trust and all these good things. They require diligence and perseverance and all these things, and
yeah,
that's what makes us happy. True,
yeah.
truly.
Yeah, integrity is key. Integrity is
Hmm.
key. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we are hiding, we can't. I mean, you don't have a good experience when you are hiding. Of course, you're hiding and you are scared, and there is not a good experience there.
Mm.
The best experience is in freedom. Really. So
Yeah.
anyways, I don't want to hide. I hope everyone can really come out of their caves and just just embrace it. You're
Mm.
on a journey, and let God's lead you through it. Right? So
Wonderful.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming by. This is long overdue. Clearly, 7 years overdue. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Howdy, howdy. I hope that you really enjoyed that episode. If you did, you probably will dig our completely free webinar for quitting porn and masturbation, especially if you want to get blessed in the future, or you're currently blessed and you're struggling with your sexual integrity, like we all do to some degree. Then check it out at highnoon.org. Go to the first thing that you'll see there, and it is a completely free and completely awesome, good webinar on how to quit porn and masturbation today. All right, check it out. Go to highnoon.org.